The red roads of Apata stretched across the land like long stories written in dust. When the wind blew across the fields, it lifted the red soil into the air, carrying whispers from one compound to another. In Apata, news traveled faster than the river after the rainy season. A laugh at the market, a quarrel between neighbors, or the return of a traveler, everything became a story told before the sun set. Children ran along the dusty paths chasing goats, while women balanced baskets of cassava and peppers on their heads. The air was filled with the smell of roasted corn and wood smoke. At the edge of the village stood mango trees that had watched generations grow and fade. Under their shade, people spoke of the past, the present, and the future. In Apata, people believed something simple but powerful: a person does not walk alone in life. Every step carries the footsteps of those who raised them. That belief shaped the hearts of everyone in the village. From the time a child learned to walk, they were taught to greet their elders with respect. A young boy would bend slightly and say, "Good morning, Baba." A young girl would kneel gently before an elder woman. To outsiders, these acts seemed small. But in Apata, they were as important as rain to the crops. "Remember this," elders often said, their voices calm but firm. "A tree without roots will fall when the wind comes." Family honor was the pride of the village. A good name was more valuable than gold. When one member of a family succeeded, the entire compound celebrated. But when one brought shame, the silence spread across the village like a dark cloud. And so the people lived carefully, knowing their actions echoed far beyond their own lives. At the center of Apata stood the oldest living witness to these traditions, the great baobab tree. Its trunk was so wide that 5 men holding hands could barely circle it. Its branches stretched into the sky like the arms of a giant protecting the village. Every evening, when the sun began to dip behind the hills, the elders gathered beneath its shade. Their walking sticks tapped softly against the ground as they took their seats. Their voices carried the calm weight of experience. It was there that disputes were settled. It was there that wisdom was shared. And it was there that stories were told, stories of ancestors, of heroes, and of lessons carved into memory. One elder, Baba Kola, liked to say, "The baobab tree does not speak loudly, but it has heard every secret in this village." The younger ones would laugh, but deep inside, they believed his words. Because in Apata, wisdom did not come from books alone. It came from listening. Many years before the events that would shake the village, a young boy named Tund had walked these same red roads barefoot. Back then, his clothes were simple and often patched at the knees. His laughter echoed through the fields as he chased birds and climbed trees with other boys. But Tund carried something in his heart that made him different from the others. He dreamed of the world beyond Apata. While other boys spoke about farming the land like their fathers, Tund stared at the distant road that disappeared beyond the hills. "I will go to the city one day," he once told his mother. "The city?" Mama Saad asked, smiling softly. "Yes," he said with bright eyes. "I will become someone important." Mama Saad placed her hand gently on his head. "My son," she said, "wherever the road takes you, never forget the soil that raised your feet." Years passed, and the day finally came when Tund left the village. The morning he departed, the sun had barely risen. A small bus waited at the dusty roadside, its engine rumbling impatiently. Mama Saad stood beside him, holding a small cloth bag filled with food she had prepared. "Eat this on the journey," she said quietly. Tund nodded, excitement shining in his eyes. The city called to him like a distant drumbeat. As the bus began to move, Mama Saad raised her hand and whispered a prayer under her breath. The red road swallowed the bus slowly, carrying her son toward a future she could only imagine. Years turned like the pages of an old story. Life in Apata continued its steady rhythm. The seasons changed. Children grew into adults. Crops rose from the soil and returned to it again. Then one afternoon, something unusual happened. The low growl of a powerful engine echoed through the village. People turned their heads. A shiny black car rolled slowly along the red road, its body reflecting the sunlight like water. Children ran after it, laughing and shouting. "Who is that? Is it a government man? Maybe a rich traveler?" The car stopped near the center of the village. The door opened, and a tall young man stepped out wearing expensive clothes and polished shoes. For a moment, The villagers stared in silence. Then someone gasped. "It's Tund." The boy who had once walked barefoot through Apata had returned. But he was no longer the same boy. Gold flashed on his wrist. Dark glasses covered his eyes. Confidence rested on his shoulders like a fine jacket. People gathered around him quickly. "Tund, you have come back. You look like a city chief now." Tund smiled proudly as their admiration washed over him. "Yes," he said, spreading his arms slightly. "The city has been good to me." But while the villagers admired the successful man before them, there was someone watching from the edge of the crowd. Mama Saad. Her clothes were simple, her hands rough from years of labor. Yet her eyes shone brighter than the afternoon sun. She stepped forward slowly. "My son," she whispered. Tund turned. For a moment, the proud mask on his face softened. "Mama," he said quietly. But few people in that crowd understood the long road that had led to that moment. They did not see the years Mama Saad had spent carrying heavy baskets to the market. They did not see the nights she stayed awake sewing clothes by a small lantern to earn extra coins. After Tund's father died, life had become a heavy load resting on her shoulders. Yet she carried it without complaint. Each morning before sunrise, she walked to the fields. Each afternoon she sold vegetables at the market. Each evening she returned home tired but determined. Everything she did had one purpose: her son. When Tund needed school books, she sold her chickens. When the school demanded more fees, she sold the small piece of farmland her husband had left behind. Villagers had warned her. "Saad," one woman once said, "if you sell everything, what will you have left?" Mama Saad only smiled. "I will have my son's future," she replied. Her hands became rough like the bark of an old tree. Her back bent slightly from years of work. But she never stopped believing. Because in the heart of every mother in Apata lived the same quiet prayer: "Let my child walk farther than I ever could." And now, after all those years, Tund had returned. Standing tall. Successful. Respected. Yet as the wind lifted the dust along the red road once again, the old baobab tree stood silently in the distance. Watching. Waiting. As if it knew that this story was only beginning. The small clay house stood at the edge of the village, its walls cracked but steady, like a heart that had endured many years of storms. Smoke rose from the cooking fire, curling lazily into the sky, carrying with it the aroma of dried cassava and roasted yams. Mama Saad moved slowly, hands calloused from decades of toil, yet her shoulders bore the quiet pride of a woman who had raised a son with nothing but love and hope. She hummed an old lullaby under her breath, one her own mother had sung to her, and her eyes glimmered with memories of a boy who once ran barefoot along these red roads. From the distant hill, a car's engine growled like a beast, drawing the attention of the entire village. Amina stepped out, her shoes sinking slightly into the red dust. She looked around with curiosity, her city-bred elegance tempered by respect for the customs she was entering. "This place, it feels alive with stories," she whispered to herself, brushing her hand across the trunk of a mango tree as if to touch history itself. She observed women pounding yams, children chasing goats, and elders sitting under the shade of the baobab, nodding in quiet conversation. Her eyes softened when they fell on Mama Saad, whose humble presence seemed to command the weight of generations. Tund, standing nearby in his tailored suit, felt a knot tightening in his chest. Every laugh, every glance from the villagers reminded him of the dirt roads he had once walked and the simple life he had left behind. His heart raced as he watched Amina approach the humble home. "What if she sees the truth? What if she knows who she really is?" he muttered under his breath, worry lacing his voice. Pride and fear clashed within him, a storm threatening to betray the careful image he had built. He could almost hear the whispers forming in the corners of the village. "This is the son of Mama Saad," and panic rose in his chest. The moment came, swift and cruel. Tund forced a smile and straightened his shoulders, turning to Amina with a confidence he did not feel. "Ah, this is the caretaker of the house," he said smoothly, gesturing toward his mother. "She has been like a mother to me." Amina tilted her head, noticing the gentle, almost sorrowful way the older woman met her eyes. "Like a mother?" she asked softly, curiosity mixing with confusion. Tund nodded quickly, afraid that hesitation might betray him. "Yes. She helps with the family." She keeps everything in order, he added, his voice tight with the tension of concealment. The guests began to arrive, filling the courtyard with laughter and chatter. Tund took a deep breath, gathering himself for the next step. Before the villagers, before the elders who had watched him grow, he repeated the lie, louder this time. "And this is my mother figure," he announced proudly, gesturing toward Mama Sod. "She has always been there for the household." The words fell heavy in the air, carrying a false honor that stung like fire. Mama Sada's hands stilled on the serving tray she carried. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes, filled with decades of endurance, glistened briefly. She swallowed the pain, hiding it behind a smile that was almost too calm, almost too serene. Elders sitting in the shade of the baobab exchanged quiet glances. Their eyes, sharp and knowing, traced the tension between mother and son. Something sacred had shifted in the air, a breach in the bonds that had always held the village together. Even the youngest children paused mid-play, sensing the heaviness that hung like smoke over the courtyard. The red soil beneath their feet seemed to whisper warnings. Pride and lies could not remain hidden, not in a place where history and honor walked alongside every villager. And in that moment, beneath the sun and the great tree, the first threads of consequence began to weave themselves quietly, yet undeniably, into the heart of the village. The red soil paths of Apata were alive with whispers. As the villagers moved between the market and their homes, their voices carried questions wrapped in astonishment. "Is it true?" one woman murmured, clutching her basket tightly. "That Tund, the one who left for the city, he denies the woman who raised him?" Children paused mid-laugh, sensing the unease in the elders' tones. Even the wind seemed to carry these murmurs along the dirt paths, twisting them like the roots of the great baobab tree at the village's center. Neighbors exchanged knowing glances, their eyes heavy with memory. "I remember when he was just a boy," one man said quietly to another. Mama Sod walked him to school herself, sometimes miles in the sun. She sold her last goat so he could have books. And now, he speaks of her as if she were a stranger. Their voices, though hushed, carried the weight of truth, and the village seemed to lean in, listening not just with ears, but with hearts. Beneath the great baobab, elders gathered in solemn circles. Their walking sticks tapped softly against the red earth, a rhythm that echoed the beating of cautious hearts. "He has forgotten respect," an elder whispered, shaking his head slowly. "To deny the mother is to deny the roots of life itself." Another sighed, recalling the long nights Mama Sod spent sewing clothes by candlelight. Their brows furrowed as they watched the growing crowd, the sun casting shadows across their faces, reflecting the unease in their souls. Apata was a village built on honor, and honor began in the family. Disrespecting a mother was more than impolite, it was a crack in the moral foundation that held the village together. Mothers were sacred. Children who dishonored them invited misfortune, and the elders knew that pride without humility was a dangerous fire. The red soil itself seemed to murmur warnings, as though the land remembered every act of betrayal it had witnessed over generations. Amina, standing near the kitchen hut, noticed a strange silence between Tund and the elderly woman. Something in their cautious glances, in the careful distance he kept, stirred a question deep within her. Why did Tund not speak of her? Why did he avoid her gaze? She tilted her head slightly, watching as he offered instructions, yet avoided the warmth in the woman's eyes, sensing the tension that words could not hide. Then she saw it, the look in Mama Sada's eyes whenever she met Tund's. It was not simply affection, it was an entire lifetime of devotion. Deep, unwavering, and patient. A warmth that seemed to radiate beyond the confines of the small clay house, touching everyone around it. Amina felt a pang of understanding, as if she glimpsed a truth that Tund's polished words had tried to mask. Questions began to grow in Amina's mind, one after another. Why does he refuse to speak of her? Why does he introduce her as something lesser, as if her life's work and sacrifices were meaningless? The unease settled into her chest, heavy and insistent, demanding answers she could not yet find. Her curiosity mingled with concern, pulling her closer to the quiet dignity of the woman who had nurtured the man she intended to marry. Meanwhile, Mama Sod moved silently among the guests, serving food and pouring drinks, her hands steady though her heart ached. She smiled gently, welcoming each villager with warmth, never revealing the wound hidden behind her eyes. Each nod, each kind word, was an act of endurance, a shield against humiliation. In the soft shuffle of feet and the murmurs of the crowd, she carried on, a mother who served in silence, embodying love that required neither recognition nor praise. Mama Saad moved quietly through the bustling courtyard, carrying bowls of pounded yam and plates of roasted fish. Her hands, roughened by years of toil, trembled slightly, but she did not let it show. Each smile she offered was carefully measured, gentle enough to seem natural, hiding the storm behind her eyes. The words Tund had spoken earlier, introducing her as a caretaker and a mere mother figure, cut through her like a thorn. Yet she swallowed the pain, forcing herself to keep her back straight and her voice soft. "Here, drink some palm wine, my child," she said to a guest, her lips curved in the faintest curve of kindness. Inside, her heart ached, but she would not let anyone see it, not even Tund. In Apata, there was a sacred belief, passed down through generations like the roots of the baobab tree. A child must never shame the one who gave them life. To dishonor a parent was not merely rude, it was to invite misfortune, to disturb the balance of the village itself. Mothers and fathers were the first teachers, the first protectors, and the first guardians of a child's honor. Breaking this rule was considered a sin as old as the red soil beneath their feet. Elders often said, "A child who forgets the hands that raised them may gain the world, but the wind of fate will scatter all they hold dear." Stories of those who disrespected their parents were whispered in every corner of the village. There was the tale of a man who laughed at his mother's worn clothes and soon found his wealth stolen by strangers. Another story spoke of a young woman who mocked her father's wisdom, only to see her children struggle to survive in the fields. Each story carried a warning, and each lesson was etched into the memory of the villagers. Honor the life-giver, and your path will be blessed. Shame them, and misfortune will follow. One elder, Baba Kola, watched Tund closely from beneath the baobab tree. He remembered the day Mama Saad had sold her last goat to pay for her son's school fees. The boy had wanted to learn, and she had sacrificed everything she owned to make it possible. She had returned home that evening with empty hands but a full heart, whispering prayers over her son as he studied by the dim light of a lantern. Baba Kola's eyes narrowed as he observed the scene now, Tund standing tall, polished, and confident, unaware of the eyes that bore into him with the weight of memory and justice. Though Baba Kola's face remained calm, his heart burned like fire. "This boy," he muttered under his breath, "he stands proud on the praise of strangers, yet he forgets the sweat and tears of the one who raised him." He clenched his walking stick, its wood smooth from decades of use, a silent testament to the discipline and wisdom he carried. Anger simmered beneath his composed exterior, a warning that the balance of Apata could not tolerate this pride unchecked. Tund, meanwhile, basked in the admiration of the guests, each compliment feeding the arrogance that had begun to bloom inside him. "Ah, look at the city boy," a cousin whispered. "He has changed, no doubt." Tund smiled broadly, nodding with a prideful tilt of his head. "Yes, the city has treated me well," he said, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who believed his wealth and status made him greater than the humble roots he had left behind. The guests laughed and praised him, telling stories of his success in the city. With every word of admiration, Tund's memory of the red roads, the clay house, and the mother who had sacrificed everything faded slightly. The soil that had nurtured him seemed distant, almost invisible beneath the glitter of the city life he now carried like armor. He did not see the sorrow hidden in Mama Sada's eyes, nor the judgment simmering in the hearts of the elders. The red soil paths of Apata had witnessed his pride take root, and though the wind whispered warnings, Tund was too lost in applause to notice. At the village well, women gathered, their buckets half filled with water, voices low as the river's song. They whispered among themselves, glances flicking toward Amina, who carried her own pail with careful curiosity. "Do you see her eyes?" one woman murmured. "She loves him, more than any caretaker ever could." Another shook her head. "Yes, that woman is his mother. She walked the red roads so he could go to school, and now—" Their words faded into the rustle of palm leaves, but Amina's ears caught enough to prick her curiosity. Hints of truth slipped from hesitant lips, half-spoken like secrets too sacred to name directly. "She has always been there," a woman said softly, pausing as if fearing Tund might hear. "Since he was small, even before the school days." Another added, "The boy grew because of her hands, her sweat, her hunger. She gave him everything." Amina's heart tightened. Every whispered phrase chipped at the story Tund had presented, making the careful lies he told shimmer like heat on the red soil, almost visible, almost undeniable. Amina's gaze drifted back toward the kitchen hut, where the caretaker moved with quiet grace. Something in the way she watched Tund made Amina's stomach twist. Every smile, every gentle nod, seemed heavier than friendship. Why does she look at him like that? Amina asked herself. Why does he avoid her gaze? Why does he not speak of her? Questions circled in her mind, spinning threads of doubt that pulled at the foundation of her admiration for the man she thought she knew. Inside the kitchen hut, Mama Saad stirred a pot of soup, her hand steady despite the ache in her heart. Alone, she allowed herself a brief pause, eyes closing as memories swept over her. She thought of years spent rising before dawn, of long hours sewing, selling, and toiling so her son could have shoes that fit, books that fed his mind, and a chance at the city life she had dreamed for him. Her lips whispered blessings over his name, though the bitterness of shame lingered at the edges. She remembered the long road she had walked, carrying heavy sacks, watching the sun burn her shoulders while her stomach ached. Meals were skipped so Tund could eat, nights spent in quiet prayer instead of sleep, every hardship endured with the hope that one day he would stand proud. And now, she thought, her son parades his success but denies the roots that nourished it. Her chest tightened, yet she forced herself to breathe, keeping her sorrow contained within the rhythm of her work. That night, under the wide African sky, Mama Saad sat on her doorstep and gazed at the stars. She wondered when her son's heart had drifted so far from the earth that had nurtured him, from the mother who had carried him with nothing but love. "Has pride swallowed him?" she whispered to the night. "Will he ever see the cost of what I have given?" The cicadas hummed their chorus as if answering with silence, leaving her to wrestle with worry and hope in equal measure. The village itself seemed to pause, sensing a balance tilting toward justice. The elders, the women at the well, even the children chasing goats across the red roads felt that something hidden was waiting to rise. A murmur of expectation hung in the air, like smoke from a distant fire. The truth would not remain buried forever, and no amount of laughter or ceremony could disguise the unease in the hearts of Apata's people. Even without a word spoken aloud, the community's judgment was palpable. The red soil carried whispers of disapproval, the wind twisting through the baobab branches as if signaling that shame had entered the heart of the celebration. Guests laughed, but the sound felt hollow, drowned beneath the silent chorus of expectation. Every glance toward the kitchen hut, every shadow cast on the clay walls, seemed to mark the beginning of reckoning. And high above, in the quiet spaces of memory and belief, the villagers felt the gaze of their ancestors. The elders spoke often of the spirits that watched over Apata, and of the law that no betrayal, especially of a mother, could remain hidden forever. In every quiet pause, in every careful movement of Mama Sada's hands, in every uneasy glance from Tund, the unseen witnesses observed, patient and knowing. The ancestors would wait, but they would not be ignored, and their judgment hung over the village like the promise of a coming storm. The red soil of Apata seemed to hum with anticipation as the villagers gathered beneath the great baobab tree. Drums beat in steady rhythms, echoing across the compound, calling everyone to witness the grand engagement ceremony. The sound of the drums mingled with laughter and the soft clatter of clay pots, creating a pulse that matched the beating hearts of all who had come. Children ran between rows of benches, their laughter bright, while elders settled into the shade, leaning on walking sticks worn smooth by decades of memory. Colorful fabrics fluttered in the sunlight as families arrived, carrying trays of kola nuts, palm wine, and gifts wrapped in vibrant cloth. The air smelled of roasted yams, sweet spices, and earth warmed by the sun. Villagers whispered greetings and blessings as they found their seats, eyes scanning for familiar faces. Women braided each other's hair, children tugged at their mothers' skirts, and men nodded solemnly to those who had come from far villages. Everyone had come for Tund and Amina, to witness a union that was meant to bind not just two hearts, but two families, two generations. Soft songs arose from the crowd, the melodic voices weaving through the afternoon air. Elders moved carefully, preparing to speak, their hands raised briefly in silent prayers to the ancestors. Amina's eyes followed them, absorbing the weight of tradition in every gesture. Blessings were whispered into the wind, and the crowd leaned in, waiting for the words that would honor the past and guide the future. The atmosphere was alive with expectation, a mix of celebration and reverence. Suddenly, a hush fell over the gathering. The music stilled, and even the children seemed to pause mid-laughter. All eyes turned toward the baobab, where Baba Kola, the respected elder, slowly rose from his seat. His robe of woven patterns rustled softly as he stood, cane tapping once on the soil. A wave of silence swept through the village, carrying with it the weight of generations. Even the drums seemed to hold their breath. He raised a hand, calling for attention. "Before blessings may be given," he said, voice steady yet heavy with authority, "we must honor the truth. For no joy, no celebration, can stand on a foundation built on deceit." His words spread through the crowd like sunlight breaking through a storm cloud, leaving murmurs in their wake. Eyes widened, whispers ceased, and even the wind seemed to pause, listening. The elder's gaze softened as he began to speak of a woman whose sacrifice shaped the life of the young man now standing before them. "There is a story," he began, "of a mother who walked paths of hardship so her child could learn. She labored, she prayed, she gave all she had. Her love was the soil from which he grew, yet he has forgotten the roots that nourished him." The villagers leaned closer, the rhythm of the drums replaced by the rhythm of truth. "The land she owned," the elder continued, voice firm, "she sold it. Every acre, every mango tree, parted with so that he could attend school. She watched as her belly ached with hunger so that he could eat. The nights were long, and she slept little. Yet she never faltered, never complained. She carried her burden alone, because she knew the future of the child depended on her sacrifice." He paused, letting the words sink into the hearts of those present. Mothers clasped their children's hands tighter. Fathers bowed their heads. Even the young ones seemed to understand, for there is a wisdom in the stories of hardship that no age can escape. The village, united beneath the baobab tree, felt the weight of her devotion, and the silence of reverence enveloped them, preparing all for the revelation that would soon follow. Years of hunger and loneliness were etched into Mama Sada's face as she stood in the shadows, her hands folded calmly before her. She did not flinch as the elder spoke. Each word was a balm and a wound, a recognition of the life she had given and the life she had endured. For decades, she had carried Tund on her back and in her heart, and now the village knew, the ancestors knew, and soon, even he would know. Beneath the baobab tree, the sun cast long shadows over the gathered villagers. Mama Sad stood quietly, hands folded, face serene yet lined with the story of years spent carrying hope through poverty. Her eyes, calm and steady, held the strength of a woman who had walked the red roads of Apata with nothing but love and faith in her son. Every wrinkle told of sacrifices made in silence, meals skipped, nights spent awake, and dreams set aside so Tund could rise. The elder's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd, firm yet measured. "Before blessings may be given, the truth must be told," he said. The villagers leaned closer, hearts tightening. "This woman, whom you have called a caretaker, is no mere helper. She is the mother who carried him through hunger, hardship, and hope. She is Tund's true mother." A hush fell, heavier than the noonday heat. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Children froze, women clutched one another, and men's jaws tightened. The news struck like thunder across the red soil paths. Eyes darted between Tund and Mama Sad, disbelief mirrored in every gaze. Amina's hands trembled as she stepped back slightly. Her heart ached, a sudden sharp pang that pierced the pride she had held in Tund. How could he hide this from me?" she whispered, voice trembling. She looked at the gentle woman in the kitchen hut. Her eyes had always held kindness, humility, and wisdom, but now Amina saw something deeper, the sacred bond of mother and child, one that had been denied before her very eyes. The murmurs grew, turning into whispers of judgment. "He has forgotten the hands that raised him," one woman said sharply. "How can a son treat his mother so?" Another man shook his head, voice carrying authority. "Disrespect of a parent brings misfortune. He must see the cost of this shame." The weight of cultural truth pressed down on Tund, each word a stone added to the burden of his conscience. Yet Mama Sad remained still, serene. Her voice, gentle and deliberate, rose above the judgment. "I forgive you, my son," she said, eyes meeting Tund's. "My heart is heavy, yes, but it is still yours. Love does not abandon, even when pride does." A quiet sigh passed through the gathering, a moment of grace amidst tension, as the villagers absorbed the depth of her strength. Tund's shoulders sagged. The pride he had worn like armor, wealth, education, city confidence, crumbled beneath the eyes of the people he once sought to impress. The admiration he once craved was gone, replaced by the silence of disappointment, the weight of shame. His heart pounded. The world he had built could not hide the truth, nor the judgment of those who saw it. He sank to his knees before Mama Sod, head bowed, tears falling freely. The villagers remained silent, witnessing the fall of a man who had tried to hide his roots but could not escape them. The sun seemed to dim as if the ancestors themselves watched the moment, their unseen eyes reminding all that no deception could escape the light of truth. Amina stepped forward, her steps measured yet confident. She knelt slightly, bowing her head with respect. "Mother," she said softly, voice carrying the authority of honor and the weight of truth, "I see you now. I honor you." The word hung in the air like a blessing, bridging the gap between past deception and present understanding. The crowd exhaled as one, the heavy tension easing, replaced by a quiet recognition. Truth, respect, and love had reclaimed their place beneath the baobab tree. Amina's voice rang clear through the hush of the village, steady and full of authority. "A man who hides his mother hides his own soul," she declared, each word sharp and unwavering. The villagers turned, holding their breath, as if the truth itself had found a voice. Tun's face flushed, the color of the red earth beneath them, and he avoided her gaze. She took a slow step forward, shoulders squared. "I cannot join a family built on disrespect," she said, her eyes glistening with sorrow and conviction. Silence fell heavier than any drumbeat. The celebration that was meant to honor joy and union now quivered with the weight of moral reckoning. The elders exchanged glances, their wisdom confirming the harsh truth in her words. Tun's chest heaved as he tried to speak, but his strength failed him. Pride that once carried him now lay broken at his feet. The applause and laughter that had followed him into the village were gone, replaced by stares that burned with disappointment and sorrow. He sank to his knees on the red earth, feeling its heat beneath him, finally bowing before the mother he had once denied. Mama Sada's hands reached out, lifting him gently, as if her strength could patch the fractures of years. "My son," she whispered, voice calm yet full of unspoken pain, "your heart has wandered, but you are still mine." Her forgiveness, greater than any betrayal, enveloped him like the warm wind across the savannah. The elders spoke softly to the crowd. "Wealth and learning are hollow without respect," one said, and heads nodded in agreement. The villagers understood the lesson. The richest man is poor if he dishonors those who gave him life. Tund looked up at his mother, tears streaking his cheeks, and made a choice. "I will stay," he said, voice trembling yet determined. "I will remain in Apata until I rebuild the honor I lost." Slowly, the village exhaled, waiting to see if his words would turn into action, if the boy who had once been swallowed by pride could truly change. The baobab tree above them seemed to sway, as though the spirits of ancestors approved the lesson learned beneath its branches. The final truth settled in every heart. A child who forgets the hands that raised him may gain the world, but he loses life's greatest blessing. And in that moment, the village remembered once again that love, respect, and truth are the roots that sustain all life.